Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us for Winchester Academy's Fall Series. My name is Julie Iden, and I am a trustee of Winchester Academy. Please take a moment to check your phones or other devices and make sure they're silent during our program. Looking ahead, we like to keep our mailing lists up to date. If you would like to either join our U.S. mail or our email distribution lists, there's a sign-up sheet over by the cookies on the counter. Also, if you need to update your information, you can let us know on that sheet also. On a related note to tonight's program, we recommend a visit to the library's exhibit room. The current exhibit is Waupaca 101, our Indigenous and Immigrant Story. On this Thursday, November 9th, the Waupaca Historical Society presents Ojibwe Culture, A Story of Survival. That will be at 6 p.m. in the Holly History and Genealogy Center with Liz Arbuckle of Wisconsin Historical Society. Winchester Academy's next program is 1 week from today on Monday, November 13th. For Staying on Track in a Distracted World, given by Ivan Wayne. Let's thank our program sponsors, Mark Flora and Sally Stevens. Our presenters this evening are Hugh Kress and Anahkwet. Hugh Kress is an educator who has taught at all levels from kindergarten through high school and has served as an administrator, coach, and served on several national boards. He holds degrees in educational administration and environmental education. He resides in Waupaca and heads up the Nature Trail Committee at Bethany Home. Hugh is a resource leader for land acknowledgement for the East Central Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. Anahkwet, or Guy Reiter, is a traditional Menominee who resides on the Menominee Reservation. He's the executive director, of a Menominee Indian community organization called, and please forgive my pronunciation, Menīkānaehkem. Thank you. He's also a community organizer, activist, author, amateur archaeologist, and lecturer. He's a member of the Menominee Constitutional Task Force. Anahkwet has organized a lot of events that have uplifted the human condition and demonstrated how enriching the Menominee culture is. Anahkwet has lectured at universities on the connection Menominee Indians have to the Menominee River. He's also written articles for Environmental Health News and other publications. Please welcome our presenters.
Okay, I'm first. And one of the things that I am a former teacher, but I think once you're a teacher, you're always a teacher. And one of the things is I don't have a real strong voice. So if you can't hear me, let me know. When I was also was a principal, I had teachers when I'd go on meetings, and they had signals they would give me. Certain signals like, can't hear you. It's a big room. The one that's probably the biggest one for you is this, which meant we need a break. My teachers would do that. So my background is, as I said, is in education. I've been in Lutheran education almost all my life to do that. Anywhere from teaching kindergarten all the way up through high school to do things. Working with universities also too. The other thing I should know about me is I'm a wanderer. I wander around doing things. And I always said I did that because it's hard to hit a moving target. I do it too, so. A little bit of my background is how did I get involved with Native Americans? And I know we have a number of people here that are religious educators too. And God works in mysterious ways. I was a teacher principal in Appleton. And for some reason, the parents nominated me for some award, and I was awarded $5,000 by the state of Wisconsin to do whatever I wanted with that money. Okay? I had no idea what I was going to do with it. We have a church synodical convention here. And I went to that convention, and there was I'm also kind of an ADD person. I didn't want to sit around, so I got up and wandered around, and there was a table there. And I looked at the table, and the person sitting there was definitely not the typical Lutheran. And it said Lutheran Church of the Wilderness on it. So I struck up a conversation, found out this was a representative from the Lutheran Church of the Wilderness, which is on the Stockbridge-Muncie Reservation. And it's a Lutheran church that's there. Fascinated with the story. Try to make this short. My wife said that she married a run-on sentence. So, so what I did, I said, I think it would be interesting. I went back to my class and said, what do you know about Native Americans? And it was basically about this much. I said, okay, I'm an experiential teacher. We're going to take the class. We're going to use that $5,000. We're going to go up to the reservation, and you are going to write a book about the history of that tribe. And they interviewed elders, and we've done a number of trips. So they played games. They did lots of different things. And I was fascinated with what they do. And the one thing I took away from it, which the best thing was, when they were done, the first thing they wanted to do after they got their book done, they wanted to interview their elders. I need to talk to my grandma. I need to talk to my grandpa, my aunts and my uncles. I want to find out our stories. And then the next project they did, they wrote their own history. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, again, being at a church thing, I found out that there was a mission on the Navajo Reservation in Rock Point, Arizona. And I was asked to be on the board for that place. Not knowing what I was getting into, we went there, and it is in the middle of nowhere. You drive about 4.5 hours north of Phoenix. It's near the Utah border. And you got to watch out for the horses on the road and all those kinds of things. And it was a wonderful experience. And the one thing that we did, though, well, as a board, we said we have to get out of the business of us running this place. This needs to be run by the people who live here. And that was our accomplishment. I did myself out of a job. It's now run completely by the teachers, the administrators, and the recreators are all Navajo. Well then, how did I get involved with this guy? I think it was fishing, wasn't it? Yeah, we were just talking about things, and I found out that Anahkwet takes youth out to Yellowstone Park fishing. And I had a bunch of fishing stuff left over from my father and my father-in-law. And so we met at Clintonville, and I gave him that kind of stuff, and we started talking about stories. So then I got a chance to be with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America here. I said, we have to do something about land acknowledgement. And he's going to talk more about land acknowledgement. But in 2016, our national church repudiated the doctrine of discovery. And that was invented by a pope in the 1500s, that basically said that this land was empty and you could do whatever you wanted to, take it over. Don't worry about the people here, they're not worth anything. So I got involved in a group that was decided we need to make a video about this. And we had a panel of people. And that you'll see a little teaser for that. It's going to be coming out in the spring. And Anahkwet was one of the panelists. A wonderful job that he did for it. So that's how I got involved with this. Okay, I got to watch the time. I don't see anybody doing break or anything yet to do too. So land acknowledgement, what it is, and you can fill that in. What it isn't, what it should be, whatever it is, but making it meaningful. Land acknowledgement can be really just a feel-good thing. And I am really determined to not have it be that. So we're going to have two parts tonight. My part is a little bit of history, a little bit of background of what is land acknowledgement. But I'm going to spend more time on land acknowledgement action. I mean, you can say things, but unless you do things, those of you as teachers know the best way to learn is by doing it. So I have come up with a theory that there are 3 levels of land acknowledgement. There's the makeup. We feel really bad about what happened. And you can see a lot of that going on right now. We just watched 2 nights ago a PBS special called Little Bird. And if you really want to see something that makes you feel really tragic for what happened, it's up in Saskatchewan, and it's what they did to kidnap, basically, the Indigenous children and put them up for adoption. And it's the whole story of that. So there's a lot of stories like that about what the things that happened that weren't good. And oftentimes, unfortunately, the churches were very involved in that. And I'll talk about a book that shows you it's still going on today. Oh, then there's the feel-good things. We can do something that helps us feel good. And I'll give you an example of a feel-good thing. And there's in the audience, I just saw one of the critics of a feel-good that our church is doing to do it too. And if he wants to talk more about it afterward, I identify him, but if not, I quoted him. And then there's actually accomplishing something, actually doing a landmark that is meaningful. Okay, so those are the 3 levels. This is my own theory. I don't know if anybody else came up with that. The first thing, we just recognize in the various ways land was acquired. We know there are a lot of things that were done that just weren't fair. They were downright nasty in some point. And I'll talk about, I just read a book that told me that it's much different here in the upper Midwest than in the South, how that was done. Level 2, saying that the land present was originally native lands. You are sitting on land that was originally Menominee homeland to do that too. And you can go anywhere in the United States and probably say, this originally was Potawatomi or whatever, Apache, so on. So you'll see if you go to universities, they have these statements on their websites. A lot of places have these statements on their websites. Level 3, and this is the one I really want to encourage people on, because being a teacher, I'm going to give you homework, if you want to. It's not required. You're not going to get graded on it, but it's an opportunity for you to do a little homework on your own. So be actively engaging. Okay? You're going to watch a video. This shows how the land was taken away. You can just read it for yourself. The people in the back can. Between 1776 and 1887, seized about 1.5 billion acres of land. And this shows over time how that happened, date by date. Keep an eye on Wisconsin. You'll see, when was that land taken away? 1800, it's still okay. 1806, okay. 1814, we're okay. Uh-oh, we're getting there. There you go, 1830s. Notice a little reservation pops up there. That's that little orange thing. And all of a sudden, you see, California shows up with lots of reservations. But watch the reservations, too. That was one of the things people said, oh, we're going to really, really give these Native Americans some good places to live. Notice that Oklahoma is almost, the whole state of Oklahoma was a reservation. But watch what happens. Oh, here we are, 2010. Anybody see the movie, The Flowers of the Harvest Moon? That's Oklahoma to do it too. And anybody tell me why? Why was the land so valuable? Oil. Okay, to do it too. That's part of the problem. If you want, I can do a whole presentation on the Stockbridge Munsee tribe, because not only did the kids write a book, but I did a lot of study on that over the last 20 years to do it too. It was always about something's valuable. We want that. You're in the way, move on or out. How about Wisconsin? Let's spend some time talking about our state. It was part of Michigan territory. There was this big territory, it was called Michigan. And there's unsettled wilderness called Terra Nullius. It was established in Roman law. I know we've got some attorneys out here that maybe have heard of this. It said basically that if the land is empty, because if there aren't people there that are civilized, you don't consider them worth anything. They weren't fully human, and white settlers could claim that. So this is a doctrine that's still going today, and I'll tell you where it's going on in the world today. So that was Wisconsin. Okay, we were part of the Northwest Ordinance of 1887. established that now this land was illegal. There was a legal basis for getting the land. And it was much different here than it was in the South. In the South, you probably heard the Cherokee Trail of Tears. And a number of them, they just moved them west, said, get out of here. Not in Wisconsin, not in our area, because the land was valuable. And if you could make it private property, you could make money on it. So they figured out how to do this, how to designate it as private property, because what they would do is they would ask the Native Americans to cede the land, officially cede it. We will give you some money, resources, whatever, if you exchange for the land. Now it's the property of the government, and the government can resell it. It's got value. Notice the bottom, land equals wealth. And there is Section 8. And the governor now had the power to lay out parts of the district into counties and townships. And that's what happened here in Wisconsin. They started bringing in the surveyors and laying out plats and lots and so on in terms of doing that. So it was a process of the orderly transfer of native land to white property owners. Because they could go to the government, and the government said, okay, for whatever amount of money, you can buy this, and that's your land. So that was the process. Okay, so here it was a treaty mechanism. You probably have heard of treaties before to do it too. Oftentimes the money, though, unfortunately didn't go to the Native Americans. They had these go-betweens, these traders. Oftentimes they were maybe half-breeds, or they were just people that took them, and they kept a big proportion. Their commission was sometimes 50% of the money. And if you look, I put this treaty down in 1836. Here we are, Cedar Point, Green Bay. Oh, let's see. Henry Dodge. You probably have heard that name before. He was the chief, and there were also chiefs of the Menominee Nation and other parts. And this is just excerpts from that treaty. It said that the Menominee Nation will agree to cede the land to the United States, all that tract of country, including the following boundaries. And you can go on. It lists all these different boundaries that have been surveyed. And in consideration of the cessation of this tract of land, the United States will pay them a certain amount. And if you're really interested, you can go and read this treaty, but it's way too long. And the important part is the said Menominee Nation do agree to release the United States from all such provisions of the Treaty of 1831 and 32, which was a little kinder to them. So now let's get rid of that treaty. Okay, so far on what is that? Okay, I'm laying the base for he's the main part of this. Okay, so here's what it looked like. Here's what Wisconsin looked like. The original people that lived here. And you can see there was about 10 million acres that was here. And the Menominee, you can see where they are. They had about 10 million acres from Wisconsin upper peninsula, Michigan. Well, what happened? It went from this today, and there's the Menominee Reservation. And I put the arrows there. Let's see if I can do that. And you notice there's a little corner cut out of it. And the corner is the Stockbridge-Muncie Reservation. Because the Menominee people, I don't know the history, maybe you can talk a little about it, were kind to that tribe because they had been moved, and I can tell you, I can do a whole presentation. They started out, they met Henry Hudson on the boat. They were Mohegans. And they kept getting moved. There's still a place near Kaukauna called Stockbridge, where they were from. And so they gave them part of that. But that's what happened to the Menominees. They went from 10 million acres to that reservation today. Make sure I push the right button here. Okay. I'm a member of Trinity Lutheran Church, and I'm kind of, as pastor sitting here, and he knows I'm really an advocate for land acknowledgement. And so Trinity has now officially passed a land acknowledgement statement. And it took a while for people to understand what that was and the church council to consider it, and it was passed. And this is what it says. Now, people in the back, again, can you read that yourself? Okay, then I don't want to insult people by reading what it's there. It's a very, very nice statement in terms of they were honoring, this was Menominee people. They've been here for thousands of years. We recognize that this was their land. And we're going to utilize the resources here, and we are guests on this land. So that was the statement. Okay, and this was a little bit about the background to that. The church council also said this, and I talked about an attitude, and I'm going to get to that a little bit more. It's a reciprocal relationship. The land is something that we live on, we give to the land, and the land gives back to us. And we should always be looking at this reciprocal relationship. And the last part of it, we're going to energize and focus to be responsible guests on this land. That's what the church said. Sounds good, doesn't it? Well, like I said, there is someone in the audience that's a local. He was on the panel, by the way, and when this comes out, you'll hear him talk a little bit more. His first reaction when I sent it to him said, I think this is paraphrasing it, it was bland, it was non-specific, and meaningless because there was no actions connected to it. And another reaction was, and I quoted, number one, guilt is a wasted emotion. Be sincere, not just words or just money are meaningless. Engage, involve, and cooperate, which I think is really interesting because Trinity Church has done a whole study of what their mission should be. And those words are fairly close to what our new mission in Trinity is. So there's hope there. Okay, let's take a level 2 one. And this is just something that came up. I found out that the Arts Board is doing a Shine project. How many here, raise your hand if you know what the Shine project is? Okay. How many here have made a square? Okay. Well, I talked to the Arts Board and I said, well, is there any square there that's going to recognize that this is Menominee land? And got kind of a blank answer to that. And I said, well, can we do something about that? So I asked a couple of people if they would come and do it, and they couldn't. So the Menominee Thunderbird is on their Great Seal. So I made a square that's got the Thunderbird on it. So that'll be a representative that this is Menominee land. So to me, that's a level 2. It's a nice action to do, but it's not a real strong action. Okay, now, I'm going to finish up with this. Just hang on for a second. This is that video. Oh, we have to go back. Oh, I think we're doing opposing things. There's a video that we're doing that is going to be coming out in the spring about this panel.
There are 574 federally recognized tribes in the United States. And when you look at the disparities that exist on these tribal reservations with 40% poverty rates and a lot of other systematic barriers that exist, from access to quality health care, education, and meeting the basic needs of our people in exchange for what was given, it is quite elusive.
It's something Indian people do these days, just pro forma to help our white relatives. Unfortunately, I think we're helping our white relatives just feel better about themselves, feel more self-justified. If they can do a land acknowledgement, the unwritten text is there. We've respected you. Can we keep your land now? I'll tell you what a real land acknowledgement might look like. I mean, you all have been there. You've seen land acknowledgements. How long do they take? 90 seconds? 2 minutes max?
And to ask the question, how is it and why is it that the claim of a right of domination has been made the organizing principle of the society and the organizing principle of the planet? That's not our claim of a right of domination as original nations and peoples at all. That came from across the ocean.
I'm part of this environment. I don't want to conquer it, and I don't really view myself as an owner.
How in the heck did they do that? How could they went through boarding schools? How could they went through forced relocation? All these diseases, all these things that happened to us as a people. How could they have gone through something like that and kept a bit of their dignity?
Hello, my name is Miles Applemont Miller. I'm a Mohican tribal member, and I'm gonna play you a song.
Conversation in the panel was really good because it was difficult, because it wasn't one-sided, because it wasn't fake. I mean, it was real. And people need to hear it. Need to know that natives have struggled, have been hurt and betrayed, and are still willing to engage. But that there's a lot of history, a lot of baggage, and a lot of work that us white people need to work on. Because it can't be all on their end. And that's, so many times that's the ask. Oh, teach us about your history, teach us everything. They're exhausted just surviving. So, you need to do the hard work to get.
Okay, so that's the video that's coming out. It's a lot of work because it's 149 raw minutes. It has to be narrowed down to about 30. And so that's a project that'll be going on. And when that video is done, it'll be available to our church and to anybody that really wants to see it. It's a very powerful video. Right now, then, I have a couple of things for homework. The first thing is, there's a book that came out a long time ago called God is Red. It talks about religion, how the religion of Native Americans and Christianity, how they mix and don't mix, those kinds of things. So that's one. I have it on the table if you want to look at it. This is one I just read. It was really eye-opening. It's called Seeing Red, and it's really a good history of our area. And it's written by a gentleman that was a Pulitzer Prize finalist, but it goes into the detail of how Wisconsin and this whole land acknowledgement was done here. And then, this is one I read, wow. It's called The Land is Not Empty. It's called Following Jesus and Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery. And I learned so much about this. It's still going on. There's a country called Suriname. It's top of northern part of South America. Used to be Dutch Guiana, I think, something like that. And it's exactly going on there right now. What they do is they bring in the churches and people, and they try to civilize the Native Americans and move them off their land. And then the mining companies come in because there's a lot of minerals there. So it's the same thing going on now in South America that happened here, 100, 150 years ago. And the last piece of homework, I saw some of you already picked it up. It's how God works in mysterious ways. There is a magazine called Christian Century, and it has wonderful articles. And there was an article in here about, this is your homework if you want to do it. There's a guy who lives in Glen Ellen, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. It's right off of I-355. He has a little plot of land. He said, I want to trace and find out what happened to my land. Where did I come from? So it's very fascinating. He starts out with saying, okay, I bought this house, I bought it from this person built it, then it was part of a bigger plot, and it goes all the way back to the Potawatomis. And your homework would be, I made a QR code. If you click on this with a QR, it'll take you, you can read the whole magazine article for yourself for free in terms of doing it. These are over by the cookies in terms of doing it. So that's your homework. Questions? Put the lights on. Any questions before we transition? I see eyes open. That's a good thing. Let's see this going on. You probably all want to hear on it. So, yes.
Was there violence involved in the act? Was there violence involved in the act? The taking the land and all that sort of stuff. I didn't hear you say anything about that.
You were going to talk to anybody about violence, or I know I can say yes. In a number of cases, if you watch the movie, that's over there. You'll see that what's going on.
I read the book, and I'm looking forward to the movie.
And there is this thing called Little Bird, which was on PBS, just came out about in Canada how they kidnapped the children. And in that movie, it's hard to watch because the father tries, after the police take away, he tries to get his kids back, and he's really agitated, and they basically beat him to death. The police do. So there's violence, definitely. I mean, there's a legal way. The legal way was usually the way of doing it, but if there was resistance, there was violence. Okay. So we'll take a little transition break here.
I want to know how long do I got? Half an hour. Holy man, I better get started. Nobody got a stretch, nothing? We're ready to go? No. Waiwana ne skespien maoniwea keo saitua. Anahkwet Menīkānaehkem Waupaca nitotam kashitna initskiwakian. Waiwanan maoniweak. My English name is Guy Reiter. That's how I pay my taxes. And my real name is Anahkwet. And that kind of roughly translates to really handsome and good looking and brilliant in our language. So if you look that up and if you ask somebody, they may say something different, but that's the true explanation. And the other thing is, I just want to let you guys know too, I am a little bit nervous because I'm not really used to speaking to crowds so small. So I just want to make sure you guys are understanding. So first, thank you, Hugh, for the invite, and thank you for your PowerPoint, and thanking the library and the Winchester Academy for having me come here and speak a little bit. So in that introduction, in our sacred Menominee language, is there any Ojibways here? Any Potawatomis? No? Good, so I can poke fun at them. They're not going to know. But in that language of ours, I just wanted to, we're told to introduce ourselves in our language first. And that is the original language of this land. It's not a foreign language. It doesn't come from anywhere. It comes from here. And in that acknowledgement, I had said my name, Anahkwet, my clan, which is a Martin, is a Martin clan, where I live, where I'm from, the Menominee Indian Reservation. That's kind of how we're basically taught to introduce ourselves. There's other things I said in there, but it's kind of irrelevant. It's somewhat letting these spirits and these ones know around here that I'm here, that I'm, and asking for their permission and letting them know, that I'm thinking about them. And it's really beautiful when you think of the way in which our elders do that greeting, because it's the Creator. It's that in our language, kisamenato is a word they use to describe that. But if you break that word down, it kind of really roughly translates to like the great big spirit of kindness. And it's such an interesting way to think about like the essence of kindness and loving and things like that. So in our introductions, we always try to use our language first to make sure we acknowledge that one. Let that one know, that we're here in a good way, in a good heart, and a good mind, and everything I say is true. Well, half of it anyway. 3/4, I would say, at least 3/4 of it is true. But my journey to get here really is I've been a 44-year-long journey so far. And I just wanted tonight a little bit speak about in the essence of that big wind that's out there tonight. For our people, the nature is such a beautiful teacher, and she's always constantly teaching you, and she's always constantly talking. And you just got to slow down and listen, and you'll see how much she cares about us and loves us. That big wind, it is so symbolic of kind of like what's going on in my life. I talked to Hugh a little bit earlier about our water heater going out and lots of other things that are happening at home, and it's that big wind, that creates that kind of, I wouldn't say chaos, but maybe organized chaos, or however you want to think about it. And it's really can be symbolic to where we are as a people nowadays. It feels like we can't hear anything. You just hear that wind, and we can't look each other in the eye, or we're in this maybe big windstorm together, and we can't hear each other's point of views and sit and talk with one another anymore. So hopefully we can change that. Hopefully we take the time to appreciate each other's words, because they're powerful. So in that 44-year journey to get here, it started in 1979. Now, I got a half hour, but they told me, though, that if I started with the creation story, I would get an extra 2.5 hours. So you better strap in, because this is the way it goes, right? It's kind of, for us, storytelling is a big part of who we are as a people. And that's not even the right word, I think, storytelling. It's oral history. Our people took great care of learning and understanding these creation stories of where we come from. And we have stories for the creation of us as humans and you guys as humans and all these things. But we also have stories of the creation of the earth. And in that story, in that big, beautiful story, the beginning of it talks about how the Creator is in complete darkness. And usually when our elders talk to us and they're given this teaching, and I'm not going to talk about this story other than just a few bits and pieces of it because it is so long and it deserves the respect to be told the way it should be told. But I'm going to just sum it up a little bit like this. Creator was in that darkness, right? In that black void. When you go home, that Creator right there? No. There's that bingo. When you go home tonight, maybe before you go to bed and you close your eyes, maybe you can think of these words of what I'm saying. Hopefully this will give you a reminder that in the beginning, in our understanding, and our teachers have always told us that everybody's creation story is right. There's not one better than the other. But in that beginning, in the darkness, the Creator had first thought. She put thoughts out into the universe. And they went on and on and on and on forever until she called them back and called those thoughts back. And lots of thoughts were going on. They say those stars up there are a symbol of all the thoughts the Creator was thinking in that darkness. And the Creator had thought that it was time to find a place or build this place where these thoughts could go, where all this could happen. And fast forward through lots of things and events, talked about how the earth was birthed from the sun and the moon having this spiritual conception, that this little ball grew, and how it rotated for 9 months, and how each planet that was around came to see this, what was happening. And each of those planets gave a little bit to that ball as it turned. And they talk about how at one point there was this huge clap, and it was almost like this bubble burst, and this earth was born, and it started to form. In that formation of that earth, he said things didn't grow on it. It wasn't until the sun seen that this earth needed something, and instead it took an arrow out of its back and let it go, shot that arrow right into the center of the earth, that fire arrow. They say you can see that scar still on the earth. It's in Canada. You can see it from space, so where that feather or where the arrow went in. When it went into the center of the earth, they say, is when things started to grow. And the first thing to grow, in our understanding, was what we call sewepuk. And it means sweetgrass. Sweetgrass is a medicine. It's a really aromatic sort of medicine you use to help clean energy and do all these things. But they talked about how our mother started to grow all these plants and all these trees and all these things, and life started to happen here. And there was a moment there where the Creator was watching this and seeing this for the first time. And they said that our mother looked so beautiful in that early stage, how beautiful she was, that the Creator started to cry. He cried so much because it was the first time. She cried so much because it was the first time that they could see their thoughts in reality. And that story goes on. There's a whole bunch more to it, but I only brought that up because I think that's so important, in what we're trying to do and what we're trying to think. And when you think of land acknowledgements, you should at least understand where this beautiful earth comes from and how amazing she is. We just went through this fall time. In our understanding, they talk about when those leaves change colors, that our mother is putting on the most beautiful dress that she has, because she's going to start fasting and getting ready for ceremony and getting ready for spring, how creation starts there in spring. So I think about that sometimes when I'm out riding around and I see these beautiful trees and all this foliage, and it just makes me wonder, I wonder what my ancestors thought about this time and how they seen it. And I wonder if all of you are seeing this beautiful earth as well, or if you're just driving by and trying to get somewhere, or maybe you're distracted by your clock like we are looking up there. That's why they told me, just go ahead and talk. You got 3 hours. It's only imaginary this time. It doesn't exist. So I wanted to just mention that and talk about that a little bit. And the land acknowledgement, the little history I know about it, I've read some about it. Each tribe has their own sort of land acknowledgement. When you came onto somebody else's land, there was a certain protocol you did. You didn't just go on to somebody's land without letting them know. I'm sure anybody that owns property in here understands that in one way or another. But if you were coming on to somebody's land, you would take the time to introduce yourself and let them know exactly how you're coming, that you're not coming in an angry way, or you're bringing something, or making sure you're coming in a good way. That's the one thing about our culture and our language. Our culture and language was given to us out of love for us by the Creator. That's the way they tell us that we should give it. So as much as I can, I'm a second-generation learner of our language. I wouldn't say I'm fluent, but I can poke fun at a whole lot of people and they'll never even know, which is always awesome. So that is a part of our creation story, right? And in my short time here in 44 years, I just had a birthday, I think, last week on the 29th. I'm kind of like grapes. I age better with wine. Like wine, I age better, look better, I'm handsome, brilliant, amazing, right? Oh, people always laugh at that. I don't know why. But my journey is pretty similar to a lot of Indigenous people. You've seen in that handsome face up there that was talking about how did they do that, right? How did they survive? My childhood was full of struggle. My mother was married to my father, who was abusive. He left us when I was 3, and went through lots of times. Right, was born on and off the reservation. I don't think that there's anybody in here that doesn't understand struggle, and doesn't understand that we share in the struggle together, right? And I can put myself in your shoes and I can understand what it took for each one of you to get here. And my story is just one story. But there's all of us in this room could probably come up here and tell us about struggle and about what it took for your shoes to get where they are today. So in that early stages of my life, I learned lots of lessons, learned many things, experienced lots of stuff. Luckily for me, I had a lot of elders that were very influential in my life. My great-grandma and grandpa were alive until I was, I think, 13 is when my grandma died. My great-grandma, she was born in 1901. And my grandfather died my great-grandfather died when I was like 10. And they were both full-blooded Menominees, and they spoke the language, and they were very cultural. And one thing I remember the most out of that time in my life is my great-grandmother had this, I would say, the stability about her. My life was chaos as a young man, not because of any particular thing, but just that's the way it was. Sometimes you didn't know what was coming around the next corner or even where you were going to sleep at night. But my grandmother, my great-grandmother, she had this sense of stillness about her. And I see that in our elders. I see that even in this room. You have that beautiful silence. And I was always attracted to that. And I felt like that was something I needed in my life, even though I couldn't really identify it and understand it at that time. But she had taught me many things, and one of the most beautiful things that she had taught me was she would say when we'd go out in the woods and we'd collect something, whatever it was, she would say, we shouldn't take everything here, even if we're picking berries. And I wanted to, and I wanted to eat them all, But she would say, let's just leave some. We'll just take what we need. I got enough here, she'd say, to make a pie, or I got enough to do whatever it is we want to do. And we'll leave the rest, because somebody else might want some. And I grew up kind of in that sort of understanding. And I carry that with me to this day. I still think about things like that and operate that way. There were times where I was talking with an elder from Alaska, and she was saying, I used to follow my grandma around, and my grandma was like the medicine lady. And she said, I followed her all day one day, just watch what she was doing. And she said, I watched her as she walked on the beach, and she'd come up to a stick or a log on the beach, and she'd reach over and she'd grab that log and she'd flip it over. She'd keep walking. She wouldn't say nothing. She just kept doing that. She was like, I watched that all day. My grandma kept flipping those logs over. She thought, the heck is wrong with this old lady? Why is she doing that? So at the end of the day, she did ask her, well, how come you flipped those logs over like that, Grandma? And her grandma told her, well, I bet you that log's been laying on that one side for a long time. Maybe it needs a break. I want to lift it on the other side. That kind of thinking, to me is so beautiful, really, that indigenous thought, to think about that log would be tired of laying on our side, because we all know you get tired of laying on one side, you want to turn on the other side. So it's those kind of things, that really helped me to understand where I come from. It gave me a really good base of the way I think today. And I'm so grateful, even though my life was hard and there were some ups and downs and everything. We always had food, and we always had a good family. I have 2 sisters and a mother. I'm fortunate enough to have a partner now, and we have 3 kids together. And they're the best teachers I think I've ever had, and they've taught me patience, and they've taught me lots of that. As my oldest daughter is now going to be 14 in December, and my son is 11, going on 17, 18, and my youngest daughter, she's right at that precipice of switching over out of that innocence. And I don't know how I feel about it. I didn't think it would come this fast. I don't think I'm prepared. And I got a PowerPoint on it. We might as well bring that PowerPoint up. No, okay. But I'm so glad to see this young person in here. That she really lifts my spirits, and I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you being here. So when I was like middle teens, I was just talking to one of my relatives, Dan, over here, about the sturgeon, or not the sturgeon, the fishing, Ojibwe fishing rights. Do you guys remember those times happening up north there when that was going on? I was just a young man when that was going on. I think I was like 12, 13. I don't even really know like what was really happening, other than we would go up to a boat landing, and stand there and protest with my uncle and other relatives. And there were so many things I think that I learned from that moments like that. I remember there was an older gentleman with a beard, and he had like coffee-stained teeth, and I remember him yelling at me and saying these things to me, and I thought to myself, like, why are you doing this to me? There's a bunch of adults over there and men over there. I'm just a kid, and why are you talking to me like that? And you could tell he was real angry, but I didn't pay it no mind, and it was a lot of lessons at that moment in my life. But then I fast forward a little bit, and if you guys remember, right at the end of that treaty fight there, Crandon Mine, Exxon Mine there was happening, which they just celebrated the victory of it last weekend up there in Mole Lake in Crandon. For you younger folks, there's maybe a couple of you younger than me, but that was a moment where this big, large mining company bought land along the Wolf River, and they were going to develop a gold mine and pollute the water there. And the Wolf River flows through Crandon, flows through a bunch of reservations, including mine, the Menominee Reservation. It flows right through the middle. In that time, we did walks, we did all kinds of things at that time to raise awareness about what was going on. And the best thing that ever came out of that, in my opinion, one of the best things I should say, is at the end of that fight that the Potawatomis and the Menominee and the Ojibwe tribes bought that land so they could never develop it, so they own it. And we stopped that mine cold. I was just a young man. I didn't really know what was going on other than just walking. But what I want to say about that is one of the best things that came out of that was called the Prove It First law. Is anybody familiar with that? So the Prove It First law was a really common sense law. It was a beautiful law here in Wisconsin, and we set the bar high when we developed that. It was out of that. It was out of the Native Americans and the non-natives coming together and working on something. And they passed this law, which basically said you can't operate a mine here in Wisconsin if you didn't operate one for 10 years somewhere else. And it can't be a third world country. It needs to be in a developed country. And you can't operate a mine here unless you can demonstrate that for 10 years after it's closed, you didn't pollute your environment. Putting a lot of emphasis, on the mining industry, which basically they call it a mining moratorium because there's no way that a mine can do that. They pollute. That's what they do. That's the part of their MO. So it stopped all mining here in Wisconsin. And that law got rescinded probably about 3 years ago by a gentleman by the name of Tom Tiffany, who's been a thorn in a lot of our environmental folks' sides for a long time. Still is. He's in the Senate right now, in Congress. But that law got rescinded, and we're now faced with multiple applications and things that are going on. And coming out of that, going through my formative years and learning all these things led me up to a time where I had to make a decision. And I sat at a table with my wife, and we had a talk about, if I do this thing, it's going to take me away from my family, going to take me away from my kids, but it's the right thing to do. We started to oppose this mine called the Back 40 Mine Project. Anybody heard of it? Oh, all right. So we did all kinds of things. That happened in 2015. We're actually still kind of fighting it in a way. It hasn't been, there's no permits or anything. They haven't been approved for anything. And there's lots of things going on. But one of the things we're going to do on November 11th is do a walk with our ancestors up there on the land up there where our antiquity is, where our tribe comes from. They call that place the Menominee River because of us, the Menominee. In our oral history, it states that we come from the mouth of the Menominee River. That's where the first Menominee came. That first bear came out of the earth and was turned into a man by the Creator. And seen that eagle and called to that eagle to come down and be his brother and to join together. And the Creator also made that eagle a man. And this is another big, long story. So, but it's kind of how it is with Indians sometimes. It tells lots of things to say. But anyway, the 5 first animals of our tribe are the bear, the eagle, the wolf, the moose, and the crane. Those are the 5 principal clans of our tribe. All 5 of those brothers came together on the Wisconsin River and the Menominee River. And there's 34 clans of us total. We're still fighting to hold on to that clan. It seems like everybody's a bear clan up there on the reservation, but there are others, and we're still trying to remember where that comes from and who we are as a people. I could give you a little bit of just our history. How familiar you are with the Menominee Indian tribe? By a show of hands, you got a so-so kind of a thing. We're all tall, good-looking, and handsome, and full of humility. See, he knows. So anyway, some of the highlights of us are however you want to think about it, is we are the first people here. We don't have a story that says we come from somewhere else or any kind of thing like that, like the other tribes do. Ho-Chunk and us are two of the original people of this land. And we've been here a very, very long time. They say that our forest can be seen from outer space because of our sustained yield, the way we cut our forest. They say that our forest up there on the reservation looks like what Wisconsin did prior to anybody else coming here. If you ever get a chance to come up there, please come up onto our reservation. Make sure you stop at our casino. You're guaranteed to win. But just come up there and see the beautiful land. And we were given a way to sustainably harvest our food, our forest. And we were supposed to cut the old and the dying trees and leave the young ones. And we were supposed to cut in a circle. We were supposed to follow that sun. That we started in the east when that sun rose, and we'd cut in a circle to the west. Then we got to the west, we'd come back around to the east. They say we cut our reservation over 9 times already, but you wouldn't look at it now the way it is. It's really quite beautiful. Let's see, I'm kind of running out of time, but the other part I wanted to just quickly talk to you, I'll get to you in a second, is one other aspect I feel is really important to understand about us as Menominees, is we were the first tribe terminated during the termination era. In 1953, the United States government, with all their wisdom and glory and all the things that they didn't get a laugh, really. I thought for sure we'd all be laughing at that. They thought that the best way to make us white people was to take away our Menomineeness, because we were doing so well as a tribe. We had our own hospitals, we had our own lumber mill, we had our own everything, and we were doing really well. But we were doing really well because we won a lawsuit against the United States X amount of years earlier because of the mismanagement of our forest. So anyway, we were terminated, and it took us about 20 years to get restored as a tribe. But we did in 1973. We were restored as a Menominee, federally recognized tribe again. And during that time, I think, to be quite honest, you can still feel the effects of that at home. There's still it turned us inside out, really. And it's hard to understand. Where do you go from there? When at one time when they forced us into boarding schools, and they forced us to get onto the reservation, and all the things that were done to us, we all had a common enemy. We could all point to the one, well, they're doing that to us. But during termination, we were fighting among ourselves, and brother was against brother, and sister was against sister. So it's hard to come out of that. But I used to, when I was at other events, I would introduce myself as I'm from the tribe that's barely making it, but we're making it, and that's how I feel about it. But now we're the only reservation here in Wisconsin that's a closed reservation, which means the state has no jurisdiction on our reservation. All the other tribes are a public law 280 tribe, which means that the state has federal or has state jurisdiction on their land. For us, they don't. So we have 235,000 acres of our reservation, and they call it the 72nd County of Menominee because a termination time, and it was created a county. But the county lands are probably only about 1,200 acres now. The rest is all tribal land. So I'm going to just really forward ahead, and I'll ask questions. If there's anything else you want me to talk about, I can definitely do that.
What about your language? How are you trying to save your language and all that?
Man.
Are you doing that?
We are. So to understand that, you really need to know to the extent of which was done to us to take it away from us. And I'm sure, I would imagine you're all up to date on Indian history, and you know what boarding schools did to our people. right? In the assimilation process, my grandfather went through it, and I remember they had this boarding reconciliation event. It was done by the White Bison Society at the time. I don't know if that's an organization still running, but it was a beautiful organization that focused on healing and trauma work, and they were out of Denver, Colorado, and the gentleman that ran that was Don Koyas, who's actually Stockbridge, who grew up on the Stockbridge Muncie reservation, and his father was Ott Koyas, who was a pretty amazing man. And I remember my grandfather just talking about what was done. He World War II vet, born in 1921, tough as nails, you know. He had a back slap that could park a Cadillac, you know what I mean? He was a tough guy. Had a farm. He did it all, you know. He lived on a reservation, and I think that generation's a whole different breed, you know, and I'm so grateful that I got to know so many of them because they taught me a lot, and I really look up to that generation. But he didn't give you much when you would ask him about things like that, and he never talked about the war unless he'd get poked by my uncle, who was a Vietnam War vet, and he'd say, "Oh, my back hurts from the war," and my grandpa, "Jesus, that wasn't no war." Then they'd get into it, you know, and we'd all just laugh. But I remember towards the end of his life, I went to that boarding school. They were going to all the closed boarding schools, and one of them was in Oneida. We had one on our reservation too that they did as well, a healing ceremony. But I remember talking to him about it, and he teared up for the first time. I seen him tear up about it, and he talked about, you know, what was happening there, and some of the things that he's seen, and he talked about how the language was attacked, and he used to speak Menominee, and I was starting to learn our language at that time, and I lived with him at that time too, and I was learning all of this language, and I was talking to him every day, and we had a moment there where I asked him a question in our language, and he was able to answer me in his language, or in our language, and it was a real touching thing. And we're probably down to about, I would say, 6 fluent speakers on our reservation out of 10,000 enrolled members. And there's a lot of us, a lot of me, a lot of there's probably about 23 to 25 to maybe even 30 second-generation learners who are trying to revive and speak and do all the things we do. If you look at, my brother started an organization called Menominee U. It's on any kind of website. You could look on internet and find it. But they do language lessons, and anybody's invited to do it. So there's a big effort to learn our language and hold on to it. And I think most importantly to live that language, because they say our language has a spirit about it. And it's really, it's like they studied our language in the 80s, and they understood that our language was 80% verbs and 20% nouns. And English is the opposite of that. And it gives you an idea of the way our people seen things and how we operated. What we call ourselves, we don't call ourselves Menominee, we call ourselves Mamache Tawak. And it roughly translates to like the movers. And I think, you know, in them days, you always had to be doing something, you know, and they were always doing something. And that's where our language currently is, but there's lots of revitalization happening on our res right now. We have a daycare where they do full-on immersion, and we're doing everything we can to hold on to what we have. And it's been amazing to be a part of it, even the little part that I've been in. I didn't want to know because I wanted to be some great teacher or philosopher. I wanted to learn our language so I knew where I come from and where I could think that way. The thing with our language is that it has like it's not a deficit thinking language. This language here we're speaking is really like a old archaic language. It just doesn't make sense. Is there anybody in here that speaks a second language? So you understand exactly. Holy man! I thought she wanted to give me a high five, but she's saying 5 languages. So you understand completely that English is a backwards language. Oh, okay. So You know, it doesn't. The way it's put together, it's really like based on fear, and it sees problems and it builds whole things around those problems. You know, our language is completely opposite of that. Our language is about connection, about like there's no word for grandma in our language. That grandmother needs to belong to somebody. She's either yours or mine or theirs, you know, kind of a thing. She can't just float around in space. But we're doing a whole lot there, and there's a lot more I could probably talk about up there when it comes to our language. Anybody got anything, pressing issues? Question?
Guy, I got one for you to start off. How can the European Americans actually become better stewards as the natives were?
Well, I think the first step in solving a problem is recognizing there is one. And then recognizing what that is. What is the problem? Is it this, or is it that, or is it me? Or is it the way that this brain operates and thinks? You know, that I think everybody should take the time to think about that. That this language we're speaking comes with a whole book of laws already. And it already has definitions, and it has all this and that with it. Doesn't make it true. It just makes it one way of interpreting what it is you're seeing. But there's lots of languages. So I would think that the best way to do that is to always remember also that we're from the earth. Right? We love this earth. And sometimes it takes you to take the day to not only thank the water for what it does. For every day, each one of us in this room, you know, it needs that water to survive. And you should at least be grateful for it. At least thank it for all its hard work that it does. And the other part of that is I think remembering to put yourself in creation every day, even if it's just for a second. So veer up at that beautiful sky or clouds, and just put yourself here on earth at that time. It's hard to think about what's going to happen tomorrow. It's not hard. It's easy. That's where you're lost, right? You're always thinking about what's happening tomorrow, what happened yesterday. Hard part is being here right now. How many of us in this room are here right now? How many of us are worried about that time? Or they got to go somewhere? Oh, I got to do this tomorrow. But right now, right here, with your feet on this ground, we're here. We're awake. We're together in this. Whether you know it or not, we're in this together. And the only way we go forward is we go forward together. Can't be one way and nobody else's way. It can't be just that way. It's got to be our way, whatever way we move forward. I don't know if that answered your question or made more questions, but sometimes I do that.
Can you say a little bit about your university?
Do you mean the College of the Menominee Nation?
Yes.
Well, that was something that started by folks that have gone on to get higher education. One of the founder of our College of Menominee Nation is Verna Fowler, we just lost her couple months ago, probably about 3 months ago. We just lost her. And another powerful lady by the name of Ada Deer. I don't know if anybody knows Ada. All right, yeah. I still got a list about a mile long. She told me that you got to get this done, do this and do that. She's always telling me what to do, you know. but I love her. And you know, the college is something that is started for our sovereignty, right, as a nation, and educating our own youth. I know there's a saying about, you know, only a fool would let his enemy teach his children, right? That's the kind of idea. There's lots of things that we're doing up there that they aren't doing anywhere else. And it's been a bit of a changeover with, you know, Dr. Fowler no longer being the lead president. We have a gentleman by the name of Kress who's doing an amazing job, young guy. Well, he's like probably 5 or 6 years older than me. Well, he might not be that older than me, but he's taking the helm and he's bringing in that youthful spirit of it, and it's doing really amazing work. And it's a two-year college. Usually a lot of people go to that college and then go off to wherever and get whatever, degree.
We just celebrated Day of the Dead to remember ancestors. 50 years ago this month, I was serving as a deacon in Ashland and in Odena, the Bad River Reservation. And I had the great privilege of being invited to a ceremony where we ate for the ancestors. First time I ever had venison and muskrat. Is that tradition, and I was, I guess, made, at least for that night, a member of the tribe so I could eat for the ancestors. That idea of ancestors, to me, is so critically important, and yet for most of us in our culture, there is nothing there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty synonymous with all tribes that have that recognition of our elders. There's a word in our language, they call it, of course I can't think of it right now. I just had it. You know how it goes. But there's a word anyway that describes the way that we see our elders, and it's only a specific word that we would use with certain elders that have acquired a certain level of elderness, maybe. It's usually those ones that are language speakers that are close to the culture and have carried themselves. Gitchiaya, that's the word. Gitchiaya. So what that word means is like, it's like an elevated being, like a higher being. That's the way we've seen our old people, that live this way. Every day, they were kind and they took care of our language. They held on to these traditional stories and things that we needed. That part right now, is the time mostly when our people feast our elders that have gone on. And there's a lot of protocol to it, a lot of things you can do, and a lot of people do it. Sometimes families have their own sort of similar things and they do their own thing kind of but I think we're holding like a ghost supper up on our reservation the next couple of weeks, where it's a community one, and it's pretty similar to what you're describing. But the other part of that too is those animals, right? In our language, they call them Manitowoc, and that little relative you mentioned, they call them Oscus, that little muskrat. There's a beautiful story about that muskrat. I'm not going to tell it because we're running out of time, but I'll run through it so you get the gist of it. Is that it saved the earth one time. It was getting picked on. The earth flooded. There's a cultural hero of ours called Mahnapus. In Ojibwe they call him Wayne Buju. In Cree they call him Wisakajak. But same entity, same spirit, same person. The earth flooded, right? And they needed to rebuild the earth. And Mahnapus was floating on a log, they said. And every animal that was from the water was like, well, I'll dive down. I'll get a piece of earth, and then we'll start it again. Each one tried to do that. And from the ducks to the fish to the ones that are in the water, right? And none of them made it. So then they seen that little hand go up, that little Oscus, that little muskrat raised his hand, said, let me try, in a little bitty voice, right? They said, go ahead, you try. And then all the other animals started to make fun of him. But the Mahnapus said, hey, well, wait, hold on. Let's give him a try. Everybody deserves at least to try. So he took off down under the water, and he's gone a long time. Pretty soon everybody got nervous about him. He didn't come up. Started to mourn him. Started to get scared. What happened? Pretty soon he floated up to the top, and everybody was very sorrowful, and tears were starting to shed. But they seen his little hand was clenched like a fist like this. And they picked him up and they put him on that log that Mahnapus was, and they opened up his hand, and sure enough, he had a little bit of earth in his hand. And they say that when you look at a muskrat's lodge, it's like a little mound. If you ever see the way they live, that's to remind us of that story. If you ever look at their hands, their little hand is white. It's to remind us of the story of what their sacrifice they did for us. So we honor those ones. So it's not just, it's funny to think you're eating muskrat, but if you understand the connection to it. It makes another meaning, right? And how grateful. Now you got that beautiful animal inside of you, you know, and that beautiful story. So I appreciate that.
I had the privilege of working on the reservation for probably 9, 10, 11 spring and summers. I worked for the Wisconsin DNR in wildland fire. Of course, 2 of us were the Lone Rangers, 2 white dudes and all the rest Native Americans on the fire crews. Of course, the 2 white guys were driving the trucks. The other guys, you know, well, take that back. There were some Native Americans driving the trucks. One of my short stories, the gentleman I was riding with, we were on standby in Gresham along a river. And he says, well, we should go fishing. He said, I brought my spear. And I said, well, I brought my net.
I used to have a friend that was in the northwest corner of the country by Seattle that way, and they were doing a lot of salmon revitalization. And he had an organization, SaveTheSalmon.net. I don't think he thought that one through.
One more, and then we'll call it.
As to the land acknowledgement, what next? I mean, these signs are easy to put up. Declarations are not that it's unworthy work, but now what?
Oh, I would throw that back at you.
Sure. Yeah.
Now what? Right? I think the history of the land acknowledgement is rooted in Truth and Reconciliation Committee in Canada, and that they got that model from South Africa after apartheid, and they took that model from them, and when you think about the restorative justice that approach they used is very indigenous way of thinking, and having the victim and the perpetrator in the same room, right, and being able to talk to one another in a restorative way, and be able to say the things that needs to be said in a respectful way with a facilitator or somebody that knew. And these land acknowledgements, right, are rooted in that. That how do we heal a nation, just like South Africa did after apartheid. So I would definitely think, if you look at what the Canadian Truth and Reconciliation Committee did, they had 94 actionable items after that. I would definitely look that up. But I would throw it back to you. So now what? Now what are we going to do?
We appreciate it.